Hey folks, Professor Finn here, and today we're going to be looking at Chapter 11 of Ralph Klicker's Funeral Service Psychology and Counseling. And in this chapter, we now stop our discussion of psychology and go into the second topic of the book in the title, Counseling. So let's go ahead and get the presentation up and dive into counseling. So first up, some important definitions. We have counseling, a non-judgmental short-term helping process where one individual, the counselor, helps another individual or group, the counselee or client, understand and deal with issues or problems in their daily life. Grief counseling, a specialty in general counseling with the goal of helping the individual grieve and address personal loss in a healthy manner. Grief therapy, specialized techniques that are used to help people with complicated grief. So what are the goals of counseling? The overall goal is to help survivors complete any unfinished business with the deceased and to be able to say goodbye. There are 4 tasks of mourning. These are the 4 tasks by William Worden. Actualize the loss, help the counselee deal with both the expressed and latent effects of the loss, help the counselee overcome various impediments to readjust after a loss, and encourage the counselee to make a healthy emotional withdrawal from the deceased and to feel comfortable reinvesting that emotion in another relationship. The objectives of this is to gain a clearer insight into themselves and their situation. Identify, talk about, explore, and understand their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Obtain a better understanding of their feelings and behaviors. Realize and utilize their own strengths, coping skills, and resources. Work out what action they need to take. Function more successfully in their day-to-day activities, and prevent the development of more serious mental health problems. So, when and how do funeral directors or licensed funeral professionals facilitate healthy grieving? Well, we can even start on the pre-need side of what we do. Sponsoring educational programs on grief and loss. Talk about the necessity of expressing emotions, etc., etc. Using counseling skills during pre-need funeral arrangements to enhance the funeral arrangement experience. If you are good at the pre-need experience, you're taking care of a lot of things. If you are poor at that and have no experience in making funeral arrangements, which there are states where you do not have to be a licensed funeral director to make pre-arrangements, you just need whatever license or credential to make a pre-need, that can create a disaster if you don't have all the arrangements set up appropriately. On the at-need side, utilize effective counseling techniques during the at-need arrangement conference to help families plan services that will maximize the potential for a healing grieving experience. Another way we can say this, if we have to appeal to your greed, is, let's get the pen up, utilize effective counseling techniques during the at-need arrangement conference to provide a superior product. If you are using effective counseling techniques to listen, ask meaningful questions, you are putting together a superior product from peer licensees in your area. This will hopefully equal a better funeral experience, a more meaningful ceremony, and again, increase the customer's perception of value on what you are providing. It will also allow you to execute the planned services in a professional, empathetic manner so the family's needs are met. If you are not a very personable person, it does not matter how good of a service you've put up. They're probably not going to see any value to interacting with you. In the post-funeral time period, follow up with aftercare that meets the family's post-funeral needs. And we're going to cover aftercare in a later chapter. So why do people seek counseling? They become aware that they are facing a difficult situation, perceive their feelings or situation as problematic, and believe that counseling could assist them in alleviating their distress and feel the pain is greater than the perceived or actual barriers to seeking counseling. Now, we don't need to limit ourselves to professional mental health counseling. We're talking about any communication with someone where someone is facing a difficult situation, whether it be work, whether it be relationships, and sitting down and talking to someone to be able to work through what is going on, because it is more beneficial in the counselee's mind to seek the help than it is to just avoid everything and let things go the way they are. So they are overcoming the uncomfortableness of not wanting to talk about it or let people in to see what's going on and want the situation to improve. So why don't some people seek counseling when it's needed? Well, barriers to seeking the counseling may involve embarrassment or shame in not being able to handle things themselves. Fear of being judged by the counselor. Fear of being labeled mentally ill. This is a very prominent one. And there is a tremendous social stigma for people who go to seek professional therapy. So is it helpful? Well, researchers have overwhelmingly concluded that counseling and therapy are helpful and that most clients improved by the end of counseling than those who did not receive intervention. The type of counseling that is most effective for individuals has not been proven, and no one treatment works best with every client in every situation. There are three major types of counseling. The first is informational. The goal is to share with someone a body of specialized information, sharing info on accepted funeral customs, legal requirements, religious rituals, etc. This is quite literally something that a funeral professional does as a matter of course of doing their job. Informing people what the legal restrictions are to things that they do, the legal requirements of getting things done, and maybe even restrictions that certain religious bodies place on ceremonies. There is situational counseling related to specific situations in life that may create crisis and produce pain, suffering, and significant feelings that are produced by the crisis. The death of a loved one brings a person to the funeral home, and the funeral director is placed in a role where they assume the responsibility of a situational counselor. People do not come to us to talk about work matters. People come to us because someone has died and they need assistance in this process. And then supportive counseling, clarifying issue by questioning and probing, validating their concerns and responses, and bring peace and understanding to the client. This does not mean you provide therapy like a licensed mental health professional, but you are being an empathetic, concerned, active listener. It is impossible to separate our job as a licensed funeral professional into any single one of these types of counseling. When we sit down to talk with a family and make arrangements, we are clarifying issues, we are questioning, we're trying to create a meaningful experience that's only happening because someone has passed away, and a good majority of the time we are providing information and clarification as to why things have to happen in what sequence or what is necessary to have things come together the way they have to be. So there are two counseling styles to choose from. The counselor must view each person as an individual and each situation as unique. Counselors need to develop sensitivity to where the counselee is and use the approach that best fits the moment. And you may use both styles in a counseling interview. So the first is a direct counseling. The counselor assumes the initiative and carries a major role in the identification and resolution of problems. You are essentially telling the client what to do. And we do that an awful lot in funeral service. We will tell the client that we have to have the text for the obituary in by a certain time in order for it to get published on the date that they want it. We need to have photographs for this. We have to charge you for a service that the county is rendering, such as approval of a cremation permit. So you have to tell the client what it is they need to do to make something happen. Non-directive counseling, the counselor guides the counselee to identify and solve their own problems. Counselor will use attending skills such as paraphrasing, reflecting, and clarifying frequently. This allows them to figure out what's going on and what they need to do. Client gains help with a problem without surrendering personal responsibility for the situation. Known as client-centered or personal-centered, developed by Carl Rogers. This is also known as Rogerian counseling. So, when we are working in our job, client-centered, non-directive, Rogerian, however you want to refer to it, client-centered counseling is more effective because it establishes a rapport with the client by effectively using attending skills, and the client and counselor come to understand and respect each other. You are not dictating to them. So, for instance, you need to give me the type of you need to give me the text for your obituary by noon tomorrow. Maybe a more non-directive approach to that would be the deadline for obituaries, or the due time for obituaries is 12 p.m. on Thursdays. Do you think you'd be able to get text in on that time? Would you like to work on it now? Anyone would you like to call, since the time is a matter? Again, you're giving them opportunities to figure out what it is best that they want to do. Work on it now, work on it later, work on it by phone, etc. Assist the person to gain perspective by questioning and clarifying. The client begins to explore his or her thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Appraises the client's problem and works with the client to determine ways to deal with them. Perceives the client's situation in several ways and communicates this to the client. Encourages realistic appraisal by the client. Encourages conversational flow by avoiding questions that can be answered with a yes or no. Accepts the client's attributes and feelings. Reflects the client's feelings back to them. Judges the ability of the client to verbalize, and does not assume the client's first statements to be true or complete. Allows the client to summarize the interview. They are helping themselves, and you are there to facilitate that along the way. Folks, that concludes this lecture. We will see you next time.